good, the bad, the ugly, and I'm still in this industry, believe it or not. So that's kind of my background. But let's talk about what interchange is, because you're going to hear that term a lot, because that's what we call the cost associated in our industry is called interchange. So what it is, how it works, and why it's fundamental to the Visa payment system. And I tell people, it wasn't so long ago that consumers were limited to making purchases with cash and checks. Correct? Everybody remembers those days, and there's still a lot of those days out there. But the search for a more convenient, secure payment method came about, and that was developed by the worldwide electronic system called Visa MasterCard. And the history of merchant services and its cost, basically, is Visa is one of the world's best ways to pay and be paid. It's accepted in now over 170 countries worldwide. And when paying with your store or in a cab, it's easy and fast, and there's more happening behind the scenes. And that's what we need to talk about, is what's happening behind the scenes. I heard strikes and I heard confusion from the drivers and complaints. A lot of them, trust me, because I've talked to them, don't understand what's behind the percentage rates and what's behind what makes up this system, even at the level all the way to McDonald's and the end consumer, which to me is retailers and store owners, etc. So what is interchange? Guys, this is important for you guys to understand what interchange is. And that's the transfer rate exchanged between the merchants and cardholders' financial institutions each time a Visa payment product is used. So that flow of information, that electronic payment, that transfer between the acquirer and an issuer, the two financial institutions and Visa, that is what we call interchange. Okay, and there's a cost derived from that we'll talk about. And it plays a critical role in motivating all the participants to keep electronic payments secure, reliable, and convenient. And so the most thing that I like to tell people is, without everybody working together, the system doesn't work. It's not meant for one party to exceed another, et cetera. A lot of people I've heard in my industry think of Visa as monopoly, and sometimes I don't argue. But at the same time, it doesn't work without all parties involved. So it's important to realize that as we go through this. So basically, doing business in a two-sided market, that's what I just discussed. In theory, this is a two-sided market. It's interesting how it works. The Visa payment system is what economists call two-sided because it consists of two different groups, the cardholders and the retailers, and each one of those have benefits they present. So you can see cardholders want a payment card that they can use at as many places as they can. That's why they carry the Visa or MasterCard brand, Discover, or American Express. Retailers want to accept a card that's held in the most wallets available, correct? And like other two-sided models, the Visa payment system must balance the needs between the consumer and to the end user, the retailer, the cab driver, et cetera, or the cab companies today in this speech. So here are the players involved. There's the retailer, who's a storefront, restaurant, hotel, taxi cab driver. There's an acquirer, and guys, this is important to understand. An acquirer is the financial institution that signs up the retailer to accept Visa MasterCard. It's very important to remember that, because we're going to come back to that when we talk about negotiations, okay? So acquirer. There's an issuer, which is the financial institution that issued me the card in my wallet. So anybody can take out their Visa MasterCard and look on it, and you can tell which bank issued that card to you, okay? And that's what we call an issuer. And then there's a cardholder. All of us are cardholders and use our card at whatever point of sale we so deem. So those are the players involved. But who pays interchange? Who pays that transfer rate for this thing to work? And it's important to understand that this is extremely important. Interchange is paid for. Retailers and consumers don't pay for it. So that's the first rule. Number two, it's the transfer rate exchange between the retailer and the cardholder's financial institution. Number three, retailers make a payment to their financial institution for Visa card transactions, frequently referred to as a merchant discount rate. I call it MDR for short. But a merchant discount rate is what the retailer pays their financial institution, not interchange, but an MDR, okay? So this is a market-based fee set by acquiring financial institutions, and our retailers can choose which MSD they want to negotiate and what acquirer they want to go with. That's basically the rule of thumb. So the economics of the two big parties we're going to talk about today who are involved are the retailers or cab drivers or cab companies, and they're allowed to negotiate their MDR with their acquiring institution. But those rates are based on a lot of different things. It's just not one magic number, like here's a 2% or here's a 1.5%. There's not a magic number. The things that involved into a merchant service discount are, as you can see, there are transaction processing, the cost to do that. There's interchange. There's terminal rentals, customer service fees, digital media services, integrated TPEP solutions, airtime, and margin for the institutions. i.e. everybody up here, okay? So does that make sense to you guys? There's a lot of things that built into that rate to where we can't just throw out a magic number. Now, we're going to try to debate that today, but that's the side of the retailer. The other side, the financial institution, are the retailers and cardholders pay a certain amount to them to participate in the system. So you can't just take a credit card without participating in the system. It's the flow of electronic payments between the institutions and the cardholder with the retailer accepting it. So that's important to know their side of it. And their job is to market it, bring promotional activities, support the development of new Visa products out there, and to expand their brand worldwide so there's more cardholders carrying the card to pay at your establishment, pay at your cab. Everybody make sense? Let's do a nod of heads. I want to make sure I'm not boring everybody. Everybody still listening? Okay, I didn't get very many nods, but that's okay. So how does Visa set interchange? Okay, it's important to understand how they set interchange. It's set in response to the dynamic and highly competitive market forces and strikes a balance between the parties that we talked about. And that all comes into type of retailer, the cost of that sale, the payment product type, the technology, and what region or country's in. Is that country regulated or not regulated, i.e. Australia, right? So it depends on that as well. So how many people, I always do this test when I train sales professionals throughout the United States and Canada, et cetera, to do this. But what do you think costs more to pay with a credit card? If I go into a 7-Eleven store versus a furniture store, and I'm paying with a credit card, do you think at the furniture store level, is it more important about the percentage rate or the pennies? The percentage rate, right? Because it's a higher average ticket. On a lower average ticket, don't you think at the 7-Eleven, do they care about as much as percentage or as much as the pennies? The pennies. So a lot of the stuff behind the Durbin Amendment and behind the push for the National Retail Association was the fact that we pay too many pennies on a small average ticket. Okay? And on the large level, we pay too much percentage on a large average ticket. So that's always been the great debate. I'm sure it's the same thing in your industry as well. And that's some of the stuff that you need to think about and that we discussed today. But that's interchange, and it's based on the average ticket is one of the most influential parts of it. And if you looked at a chart, if I were to pay with my credit card for an $8 taxi ride versus an $80 taxi ride from the airport, it's a different cost percentage based on simple math of a higher average ticket versus a lower average ticket. Does everybody get that? So how much is interchange? It's not one single amount. It's kind of what I just discussed now. There are a number of things that go into it and the similar type of product used, and there are different rates to encourage different users. So how many people in here carry a reward card to get points, miles, et cetera? That's paid for through a higher interchange rate to the business owner to pay for the points I get when I travel. Okay? So I always liked when I sold on a sales level, go in front of a business owner and pull out my credit cards and tell them that, when I get in a taxi cab, I pull out my corporate card because I'm traveling for business. So when I pay with my business card, it costs you more, almost 3% sometimes. When I pay with my reward card, it costs you more because you're paying for my miles. When I pay with my check card, it costs you less because it's tied to my checking account. And so it depends not only on the average ticket, but it's a moving scale based on what card I have in my wallet. Now, a lot of people don't understand that, and if you educate drivers on that, it makes a big difference. And can merchants negotiate interchange? The answer to that simply is no. I put it in a polite way here to say no. But it's a mechanism that allows this system to work worldwide. It's made up by the financial institutions getting reimbursed for the card holders that carry their cards out in the public, and it's paid every time a transaction takes place. That interchange is a reimbursement to the financial institution that put that card in your wallet. Okay? So you can't negotiate interchange. It's set by Visa, MasterCard. There are times when some countries are litigating interchange at a legal level, but at a merchant level, we cannot negotiate interchange. So here are some of the rates in the different industries. I like to show people some of the different industries out there so you get a good feeling of, is this fair for my industry versus all the other ones out there? You can see if you're a retail store and I walk in and pay with my credit card, interchange set by a retail store is 1.54% and 10 cents. If you look at restaurants, same thing, 1.54 and 10. Hotels, 1.54 and 10, whether it's keyed or swiped. Supermarkets, 1.25 and 5 because they're a lower average ticket. Service stations, 1.15 and 25, even for pay at the pump. And then e-commerce sites, because there's more risk involved, it's a higher percentage to pay for fraud at a 1.80 and 10 cents. The taxi industry, which if you guys want to know is SIC code 4121 on the Visa MasterCard charts, and it comes in at a 1.54 and 10 for regular swiped credit cards, not all the different card types, but for a regular swiped credit card, 1, 5, 4, and 10. So there's no dues and assessments or anything nothing like that. So this is the cost that's a base cost before we start adding all the other fees in there, and it's important to understand it. This is interchange, okay, 1, 5, 4, and 10. So basically, what are the different card types that also affect that base interchange rate? Because remember, there are more card types. There are rewards cards, there are check cards, corporate cards, signature cards, travel and entertainment cards, standard cards, international, and small ticket, which taxi cabs have a lot of small ticket transactions. Those rates for a swiped check card is 0.95% and 20 cents. So you can see it's lower because it's a check card, and Visa sets lower interchange every time you pay with a check card. With a corporate card, it's higher because you're paying for that business to get their statements reconciled by Visa at the end of the month. There's a higher cost for that at a 2.25 all the way up to a 2.95, depending on the type of corporate card. My corporate card costs business owners a 2.95%, the highest you can pay, because of the way my corporate card has been issued to me. Reward cards, 1.95 and 10% because you're paying for those miles. And small ticket cards, which are transactions less than $15, on your SIC code, come in at a 1.65 and 4 cents. So you see, they realize the smaller the average ticket. Visa said you won't take my cards unless you have lower pennies, correct? So you see how they've negotiated. Then this one interchange right here is what made McDonald's, Taco Bell's, etc., give in to taking credit cards because of the lower pennies that Visa put out there and what made them start taking cards. So now we have the great 5% debate. We got a basic understanding where it comes from, interchange. And on top of interchange, that 1, 5, 4, and 10, Visa charges what we call a dues and assessments fee, because Visa doesn't make any money off interchange. They make their money off dues and assessments because they used to be a nonprofit company. They could only make it off dues and assessments. And right now, that's 0.11%. MasterCard has raised it. If the average ticket's over 1,000, it's 0.12. But for your sake, it's 0.11% is dues and assessments that they collect in order to grow their brand worldwide and nationally. Okay, kind of a boring number, but when we guys at the interchange level look at it, it's not considered interchange, but when you blend it together, we're now at a 1.65 to a 1.69 for MasterCard, a blended rate about that. Before I start throwing in the fact that you're going to take my corporate card, my reward card, etc., and the fees start going higher. But I'm a studier of the Nielsen report, which means it's not what Paul preaches, it's not what anybody preaches, it's statistical studies on our industry and card types accepted. And if you look at the taxi industry, and the average ticket over the years has actually been going down. And I know Ira and I spoke about this, that over the years, you can see as your card acceptance has been going up every year in the back of a taxi. More people are paying with check cards because people don't carry credit cards as much anymore because of the economy. They carry check cards, which is driving the average ticket down, which is also driving the cost down. So that cost on average is coming into about a 2.35 to a 2.5. I think Ira was safe in saying more of a 2.5% coming in with all the fees involved on an average card type and an average transaction. So here's a study of the parties involved in the 5% fees, and I hope I listed them all. But there are interchange rates, which are set by the financial institutions to accept the cards that we just covered. There are the credit card processor companies, people out there that are the acquiring side of it, who set their profit margins, right, to make money on top of interchange to allow you to process your transactions at the point of sale. There are the TPIP vendors that they have to cover their costs for integrated solutions, media and GPS. They have to cover POS companies and any digital dispatch services. There's a cost involved to bundle that into what we present to drivers at the back of cab. And then the TLC requirements, not a big cost, but I'm sure there's costs involved for end of shift reports, you know, the time flow of money for tips and when drivers want their money at the end of the day, but yet that company doesn't get reimbursed until 2 days to 3 days later, so they're having to float their money. And then the taxi base station costs. You know, I'm sure there's some costs involved with running your station, et cetera. And then the monthly fee for airtimes, media, equipment, statement fees. I can't run a cord to a taxi cab. I have to pay for the airtime for those transactions to process wirelessly. And there is a higher cost for